as their leader.
No.
Is there no women in the Labour Party who can do the job, apparently?
Yeah. Well, the Tory party always used to be, male, pale and stale.
Did.
It certainly isn't at the top now.
It is interesting, though. For me, when I see the candidates, I didn't really go, oh, there's a black one, oh, there's a... I didn't really notice it. And I'm very pleased with that, because that means that, you know, I want to know how good they are. Can they do the job? We'll be discussing whether we think he could do the job or not later on. But can they do the job? And, you know, do they get on with their colleagues? That sort of thing. Can they give the charisma that is needed to project their vision onto everybody so that we all go along with it? Can they... You know, that's what I'm after. I don't care.
I think Rupert Hook can't bear the thought that a black person could be a Tory. I think that's the bottom line. She simply cannot understand. She hasn't got the mental ability to understand that it's OK to be black and right-wing and a Conservative. She cannot get her head around that.
They used to say it about gay people because of Section 28, the thing that was brought in by the Thatcher government, where local councils weren't allowed to spend money promoting homosexuality in a positive way. They couldn't believe something like me, a gay man, you vote Tory, you like Mrs Thatcher? I worship Mrs Thatcher. And lots of gays were in the 80s and 90s were Tories and still are.
Gay icon she was.
She certainly was.
Because it's actually got nothing to do with what somebody else's perception of you is. And I get it a lot on social media in particular, people calling me a traitor, as if you don't represent. And I'm like, I don't really represent anybody. Only the people I represent are those who have similar views as mine. That's it. It's really what, if they think the same thing as me, then what I'm saying, they are represented by me. If they don't, then there should be no presumption that just because they're the same colour as me will think the same thing. I mean, that is a nonsense.
Yeah. I wonder what they're going to do with Hug, because is they going to give her the whip back? Are they going to let her stand as a candidate at the next general election with views like that? There's a lot of people in her constituency are black, obviously.
Well, that just insulted all of them.
That won't have gone down well. But then you see the Labour Party apparently having this surge of 33% up in the polls and things like that. But then, if I look at it, I mean, they've had the anti-Semitism. They've had Keir Starmer saying that he wasn't sure what a woman is.
No.
So initially, they kind of lost their Jewish votes. A lot of people are coming back, but, you know, then they've ostracised women. You heard Rosie Duffield talking about... I think it was Eddie Izzard.
Eddie Izzard. She was very good, very positive. Very good. Yes, I will leave the Labour Party.
So you're ostracising women, and then now you've ostracised black people. How on earth are they 33? Well, I suppose with what's happening now, they might be, but I
think it's fairly easy to see why they are.
I think if we set up a party, we'd probably be further ahead.
They're 33 points behind because they've made a right haulage the last week, a proper haulage, starting this time last week with the state. These budgets normally unravel. They don't tend to unravel within 48 hours with such a spectacular impact on causing a run on sterling and causing the stock market to collapse and causing the Bank of England to intervene due to £65 billion.
I mean, what is so extraordinary, I know we're going to be talking about it later, but what I found so extraordinary, I happened to be away over the weekend. I was on an EasyJet flight to Geneva on Friday, so I missed it. But when I got back, I couldn't believe the turmoil that was going on. Why couldn't they come out and explain? I mean, I did a tweet which said, never mind where's Wally, where's Kwasi? I think this was on Tuesday of this week. I mean, people need reassurance, they need explanation, they need their confidence restoring, and nobody appeared, which all led to the general hysteria amongst the general public.
And what they could have done, the Chancellor could have addressed the nation. Every programme would have carried it. 10 minutes. Labour would have had a right to reply the next day. But that's what they should have done. If you're making such major changes, which they were, and actually I think if you are going to do these sort of changes, you need to massage public opinion for weeks in advance to get them there. But that's what they should have done that night. And I did speak to somebody in number 10 and said, why haven't you done it? They said, the budget speaks for itself. They said, it doesn't, because it hasn't worked.
Well, yeah, I think that could be a level of naivety, but I also suspect that it's great for the left side of things to just keep pummelling at the Tory party, because actually some of those policies, you know, if they'd perhaps prepared or managed people's expectations, would be quite successful. And it's unfortunate that the city is so jittery that it responds in the way it does when there is change.
You've got the city slickers betting against the pound. How patriotic
they loved
are they?
It. Oh, they listen. When people say, "Oh, the city is terrible," no, they were rubbing their hands in
loving it.
They made a fortune. Rubbing their hands. They made a fortune out of this. So there's a lot of winners in this as well. But we're just we the general public, are the losers.
Black Wednesday back in 1992. What was the name of the guy who made billions and billions?
George Soros.
Who then pumped millions into the Remain campaign here, even though he doesn't live in Britain.
And you know, at the end of it, I think that there is this sinister, and I you know, maybe it's a conspiracy theory, but I do sometimes think that those who sort of didn't win the referendum to vote to remain, those who voted to remain, I feel that there's sort of a pressure. It seems to be those are the people, if there's a constant pressure, and it seems that just to change, there's a will for them to change the way things are going.
Yeah.
And that's they're not
And
gonna
they
go
want
away.
revenge against anybody associated with it, which basically is the Tory government.
Well, I mean, what are your thoughts? Send me your thoughts as ever. I'm looking forward to your email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at GBNews. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. At 4:50, Putin, in a speech today, declared 4 regions of Ukraine now Russian, following sham referendums in the east of the country. There's now greater risk that the war, if Ukraine continue the fight on these now annexed territories with weapons supplied by the West, could spark Russian retaliation to the rest of the world. And after the break, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, does trickle-down economics work? With Liz Truss, with Liz Truss casting herself as an heiress to Thatcher, I want to know if you think making the rich richer will lead to investment that benefits everyone else. Your thoughts, as ever, email and tweet at GB News. There's a poll up right now. I'm asking, does trickle-down economics work? What is your view? Cast that vote now. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you.
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's
news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello again, Aidan McGivern here with the latest from the Met Office. Rain, heavy at times, will cross the country during the rest of the day, accompanied by strong winds and gales in places. But showers will follow the main area of rain, so still further spells of rain to come into the northwest once these weather fronts have moved through. And these are the features that are crossing central parts of the UK, tied into a deep area of low pressure. That's what's bringing those strong winds to the north and the west. The rain, as it clears the southeast, will also be accompanied by gales through the Dover Strait, so very blustery here for a time, 55-mile-per-hour wind gusts. However, by midnight and shortly after, the rain clears out of the way. Clear spells follow, but also quite a number of showers. And with a breezy night to come, well, it's not going to be as cold as it was last night, with temperatures at around 8 to 11 Celsius as we start off Saturday. And bright blue skies for many first thing Saturday. Further showers from the word go across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Western England and Wales. And there'll be showers through central and eastern parts heading into the afternoon. In between the showers, still a stiff breeze, but some shelter from the breeze, and it will feel pleasant enough, 18, perhaps 19 Celsius. There won't be much shelter from the showers, though. They will come through at a pace. That means they won't last that long. And into the evening, many of the showers in the south will disappear. Further showers to come for Scotland and Northern Ireland, northwest England. Meanwhile, towards the southwest, the clouds thicken. We'll see some more persistent damp weather into the far southwest by the end of the night. 13 Celsius here. I think more typically 8 to 11 Celsius elsewhere across the UK. And still some sunshine around first thing across central and eastern England, North Wales. Further showers for Scotland, Northern Ireland and for parts of northern England. But in the far south, thicker cloud and some spells of rain through the day, particularly towards the southwest. Monday, drier in the south, but further rain or showers in the north.
Good afternoon. This is GB News. You're live with me, Nana Akua. Now, before the break, we were discussing Labour MP Rupa Huq and were they right to suspend her over her comments. Let's see what you've been saying. Nigel says the recent foolish remark by the Labour MP shows she's how educated she is. She may be learned, but uneducated in life in general, and also seems to have a very large chip on her shoulder to further unnecessary hatred. Jane says, I love Nana Akua. Oh, thank you, Janie. I love you too. I think she's absolutely brilliant. Of course, I'm going to read that one out. Just says what she thinks. She's a breath of fresh air. Thank you so much. Adrian says, all people are superficially coloured. Colour is just the outer skin. We all have the same coloured muscle, blood, fat, veins and organs. Do you know what? In some way, she's slightly right then, isn't she? Because she's also superficially her colour as well then, if we go with your thoughts. Joanne says, I want to thank Nana for putting her head above the parapet and standing up for what is and is not racism. I, as a white person, could not say half of what she says without being questioned by the police. Yes, and I'm surprised Rupa Huq hasn't been questioned by the police. But now it is time, thank you for your thoughts, for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, does trickle-down economics work? After a week of turmoil in the financial markets, the pound has today bounced back to its highest level against the dollar since the Chancellor announced his controversial mini-budget. Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss have received intense criticism for their financial plans, which amount to deregulation, a smaller state and lower taxes, which, to be honest, don't sound bad at all. But will taking less money in tax from the richest lead to a boom in investment and consumer spending? Does trickle-down economics work? Right, so I'm joined now by Dr. David Jeffrey, lecturer in British politics at the University of Liverpool. All right, so David, first of all, just as a quick summary, what does trickle-down economics mean? Because some will be listening saying, I'm not quite sure of the concept.
Well, trickle-down economics is this idea that when you reduce taxes on richer members of society, they will then use the money that they save to reinvest in ways that are beneficial to those who have less money. And so tax cuts for the rich will, in the long term, benefit the poor. One of the things to take from this, though, as Thomas Sowell notes, is that this is generally not a policy that is articulated by those on the right. It's often used as a straw man for the left when the right want to do something like cut taxes on higher earners. They then call it trickle-down economics. William Atkinson in Conservative Home wrote a great article saying it's a left-wing fantasy, and I think he's true. There's no real right-wing economics school of thought that says trickle-down economics is the way forward.
But it feels pretty logical that it would work, right? So if, for example, the street next door, their house prices go up, then the rise in house prices will trickle down to me and my house price will rise. So in a sense, that is trickle-down economics, isn't it?
Well, the benefit or the point of these tax cuts, I suppose, from the Truss perspective, is that they will spur more economic growth, which is taxable. So there'll be more investment, there'll be more economic activity, and the government can take its slice of that. And it's this old analogy of the pie. Instead of having a bigger slice pie, you grow the pie, you make the pie bigger, so a smaller slice will feed you just as well. It's that sense of if you grow the economy, you can tax that growth, and you can then have more income to spend on things like infrastructure, skills, the NHS, all things that will help boost growth further.
So what do you think then, David? Do you think it'll work? Does her plan sound like it's worthy of anything?
It's very bold, isn't it? It's the largest set of tax cuts in the last 50 years. I think Liz Truss is in a position now where we've only just over 2 years to go before the general election. These moves have to be big and they have to be bold. And I think they've certainly done that as a team with her Chancellor. But what is difficult to say is whether these reforms will have an impact within the 2-year time frame before the general election, or it might just be the case that actually what Truss does is set the groundwork for the next government to benefit.
I see. Okay, well, let's now speak to Simon Gerard. He's former president of the National Association of Estate Agents. Simon, what do you make of the budget?
I find it concerning, but nothing really we should be surprised about. We had a leadership election, and it was stated quite clearly by Mr. Sunak what the repercussions of Ms. Truss's suggested economic plan would be, and that has come about. As far as trickle-down economics is concerned, it does have its place. Having said that, I think that it works in a benign economy, or one where there is growth, because then those that have money will invest it. But in the crisis that the economy is in at the moment, with interest rates having to go up because of the inflation scenario, it's inevitable that that extra money is likely to be used to pay off additional interest or to cover unexpected things that may happen as a result of the economy having a downturn.
Well, Simon,
The biggest worry I was just trying to say for the economy as a whole is the effect this is going to have on the housing market and the property industry, because it is one of the greatest drivers within the economy to allow money to be released into the economy so that the economy can recover. The issue that you have is that the property industry and the housing market is very much led by confidence rather than reality.
Simon, but I'm just going to, I'm holding you back because you said that obviously Rishi Sunak said what would happen and it did happen, but then he should know because he set the groundwork, didn't he? I mean, you can't blame all of this on Liz Truss. High interest rates needed, I think, to go up, and they hadn't gone up for ages, so they'd been kept superficially low. And a lot of savers weren't benefiting. I don't know whether these current hikes will help savers. I don't think the banks are passing the benefit on. But it does sound as though, I mean, would you say, I mean, this isn't all Liz Truss's fault. And as David pointed out, the next person who comes in may be the beneficiary of these plans.
Yes, I agree. And although it's not Liz Truss's fault, how she reacts and deals with things is very important with regard to the confidence that I was just explaining in the market. Now, if interest rates are going up, it's important that other things are being addressed, especially as far as the majority of the populace is concerned, if you're going to have any confidence in the economy and it recovering. And I think that she's talking to the 60,000-ish Conservative voters that voted her in, and giving them a tax break, as opposed to looking at the wider problems within the economy and supporting those real people, which is what the Chancellor has been doing for the last 2 years through COVID, etc., and why we have got an inflation scenario.
Well, I think a lot of self-employed people who didn't get any benefit for the last 2 years would say they're also real people. Can I bring David back in? David, what is your view on what has been said there? Do you agree with him?
Well, I mean, there's also the reduction in the lower rate of income tax, and 20 pence to 19 pence, which will benefit a lot of people. I mean, the issue really with the markets wasn't the amounts that were announced were so large that they kind of sparked panic. What it was an almost arrogance amongst the Chancellor that there would be more to come without having the usual safeguards that markets are used to, such as the OBR forecasts. There's a sense that, you know, the higher rate of income tax being abolished will cost about £2 billion, which in the context of the energy price cap is nothing, right? It's change. But that seemed to be what spooked the markets, and it's because there's no sense that public spending will be brought under control. And one of the issues with this dash for growth is the tax side of it is actually really quite easy. Some of the bigger issues that are holding back our growth around the planning laws, the planning system, around infrastructure and where we build these big projects, and also around things like healthcare, right? The NHS is creaking at the seams. And that has a knock-on effect on people being able to work. So all of these are holding back growth. And it's quite easy in the grand scheme of things for the Chancellor to cut tax. It's going to be more difficult for him to get, say, or for Truss to get planning reform through a Conservative party.
Well, Simon Gerald, thank you very much. He's the former president of the National Association of Estate Agents, and also David Jeffrey. Thank you very much. Right, well, thank you very much for joining me, guys. Thank you. Right, so if you just joined me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's just coming up to 34 minutes after 4 o'clock. Lots still to come. Don't forget, at 5 o'clock, breaking news, NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg is set to hold a press conference after President Putin declared 4 regions of Ukraine to be Russian. We'll be crossing to Brussels live, and I'm asking, is there now greater risk that the war in Ukraine, if it continues and they continue to fight on these now annexed territories with weapons supplied by the West, could spark Russian retaliation to the rest of the world? After the break, we'll also continue with the Great British Debate. I'm asking, does trickle-down economics work in light of the rollercoaster week for the pound following the government's mini-budget? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Nana. It's 4:34. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. The UK is stepping up sanctions against Russia after the illegal annexation of 4 areas of Ukraine. President Vladimir Putin announced Moscow would take control of the regions across southern and eastern Ukraine after so-called referendums held there. The move has also been condemned by the UN as a dangerous escalation and jeopardising peace. Meanwhile, Ukraine's president has formally submitted an application to speed up the process of joining the Western military alliance, NATO. The Office for Budget Responsibility says it will deliver its initial forecast on the impact of the government's policies on the 7th of October. It follows a meeting with the Prime Minister and Chancellor attempting to reassure financial markets. Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng are facing criticism amid rising mortgage bills and instability after last Friday's mini-budget. Bones believed to be the potential remains of Keith Bennett, a victim of Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, have been found in a remote location on the Saddleworth Moors. They were discovered in the Peak District by an author researching the 12-year-old's murder. Greater Manchester Police say it's far too early to be certain whether they're human remains. Brady and Hindley murdered 5 children in the mid-1960s. The couple have since died. Merseyside police have arrested a 40-year-old man on suspicion of assisting an offender in connection with the murder of Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool last month. The 9-year-old was shot in her home in Dovecot in August. Her mother was also injured. Yesterday, a 34-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of murder and is being questioned by police. Officers continue to appeal for information. An inquest has concluded that the death of Molly Russell was caused by an act of self-harm, while the schoolgirl suffered from depression and the negative effects of online content. The coroner found that the 14-year-old had been a frequent user of Instagram and Pinterest, viewing thousands of posts related to self-harm or suicide. Molly's father, Ian Russell, says far too many people are struggling like she did. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Nana.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's
news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
If you just joined me, where have you been? This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget, you can download our GB News app where you can follow all the programmes live. I'm Nana Akua, and we return to our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, does trickle-down economics work? Now, the pound has today bounced back to its highest level against the dollar after a drastic fall earlier in the week, where I know a load of traders made a load of money following the Chancellor's mini-budget announcement. Kwasi Kwarteng says the government is pushing ahead with its plans to cut taxes and regulation to boost investment and spending. And the idea behind that, of course, is that if the rich are released from the burden of tax and are free to invest, then the rest of us will feel the benefits. The International Monetary Fund, or otherwise known as the IMF, they've criticised the plans. They've said that they will increase inequality. Let's see what my panel make of that. With me here this afternoon is Andrew Pearce. He's a consultant editor at the Daily Mail, and also author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton. Well, so I'm going to come straight to you, Andrew. What do you make of this, then? The tax take is going up, presumably because the tax rate is going up. It's going up. Is that right?
Cutting the top rate of tax has been proven again and again. After Thatcher cut it in 79 and again in 1988 when it went down from 60 to 40%, when Cameron cut it from 50p to 45%, the revenue went up because rich, clever people are not using lots of tax avoidance schemes, so more money stays here, they spend more here. So it's good economics, but it's bad politics to do it at a time when people are worrying about their jobs, when mortgage rates are going up, interest rates are going up. What I think they should have done last week, when they announced the freeze on energy prices, that's a huge investment, and they're getting no credit for it at all.
200 million or something.
It's just billions. Yeah, 200 billion. So they should have done that, and then when we've got the detailed financial statement in November, that's when he should have announced the details of the tax cuts, because mortgage rates are going up from Arkansas to Aberdeen, all around the world. But now the Tory government are going to be blamed for them going up here because of the financial statement last year. They were going up anyway, so they're now being linked as Truss's mortgage rate rises. That's where they've got it all wrong. If you're going to cut the top rate of tax too, you need a lot of time. You've got to really sell the virtues of it, and they didn't. They just announced it, and then he gave that flipping interview on Sunday, the Chancellor, and he said, "Oh, markets may be spooked. I'm going to cut taxes even more," with no attempt to explain where the money's coming from.
And although quite a lot of our economic woes can be traced back to COVID and the lockdown and who wanted longer and bigger lockdown with Starmer, people will have forgotten that come the next election. And it would all be, as far as I can see at the moment, it will all go back to last Friday. But, I mean, it was Churchill who said that capitalism is the unequal sharing of blessings. Socialism is the equal sharing of misery. So if you have a bigger cake, the people at the top of that cake financially are going to get a bigger share, but everybody will get a bigger share as well. And there's no point sitting at the bottom of the heap looking enviously at the people at the top and saying, as long as they don't get any more, I'm fine. That's wrong. Give them a tax break, and as Andrew says, more money will come into the exchequer. That's more money to spend on everybody else. That happens all the time, every single time. I mean, when I remember back in the 70s, the top tax rate was 98%.
Yeah,
I mean, you've got 2 pence for every pound that you earned, which is a nonsense. And that came crashing down to, I think, 40% or something, and the tax rate went up. I mean, the top 1% of earners in this country pay something like 4%, I think it is, of the total tax take. I mean, they are the ones who produce most of the tax revenue. But quite right, why do it now? Why take away from this incredible, thank you very much, £200 billion energy help? That would have been all over the place, but it's their communications which has been so disastrous. They haven't explained it. And it seems to Joe Public like me, it seems arrogance to have ignored the Office of Budget Responsibility. Yeah. Why just say, oh, we don't need that. We don't need to ask them for any forecasts or anything. Why? Well, I mean, I know a lot of people criticise the OBR for being this, that and the other, but to the average person, why not take some independent advice? People will say they're not independent, but most people will regard them as relatively independent. Why not do that?
I think, you know what, I think the answer is that they're a bit inexperienced. There's trust and consequence. And I think it's inexperience and naivety, really, that it was the thing there. Because a lot of people say to me, oh, well, what are they doing to help me out? I'm thinking, well, what about your energy bills? Why has everybody forgotten? Or the other show I did, there were quite a few pensioners who got in touch saying they're not doing anything to help pensioners. Whereas I just thought, well, first of all, they're bringing back the triple lock, so that helps pensioners. And also, they are supporting their energy bills. So I just thought
But also, interest rates, when they go up, mortgage rates go up, savers rates will go up. However, they're so flippant, the banks, aren't they, to raise mortgage rates and the rest. As usual.
I mean, the Truss has got a sort of week off because she's got the Tory party conference coming up, but she's got to go back and face the Commons. And I can't remember the figures any longer because it seems like light years ago. But the vast majority of members of Parliament did not vote for her. She is not the leader they wanted. So she's going to have to go back to... And the MPs, they're all now worried about their constituencies, their majorities, are they going to keep the jobs, etc., etc. They're not actually worrying about the economy of the country, running around like headless chickens. But she's got a hell of a problem on her hands. Let's hope that her new chief whip, who I can't remember her name, but I know she's a woman, let's hope she's up to the job, because she's got a tremendous communications job to do within the House of Commons and also to the general public.
Yeah, there's a very interesting article briefly in the Telegraph today from Fraser Nelson, who's also the editor of The Spectator, suggesting she might not, it hints she might not be there come the next election. They may top her.
Oh, not again.
With Tory MPs alike?
Well, I don't know.
That would be
so
madness.
It would be
They're
madness.
so stupid. I mean, like, this is the problem that we have. They're complaining, oh, well, you know, we didn't choose her as our majority candidate. Well, listen, the general public are looking and saying we didn't choose any of them. They chose Boris. So why on earth they got rid of the person that they
shouldn't have got rid of him anyway.
have done that. That's their own fault.
She's the first Prime Minister we've had. We've had Cameron, May and Boris, and she's the first one we've had who is not what I call a kino. Conservative in name only. She is now producing conservative policies and all the Tory MPs are running scared. Give her a chance.
I agree.
That's ridiculous.
Support
Give her a chance, otherwise it's all over for all of them. But as
for all of us.
Exactly, for all of them, and all of us will end up with a Labour government, which, I don't know, I mean, what are your thoughts? But the show, as ever, is nothing without you. So let's welcome our great British voice, your opportunity to be on the show. Tell us what you really think about the topics we're discussing. Where should we go? Should we go to Scotland?
Yes.
Let's go to Scotland. That's a terrible accent. We'll go to Edinburgh and speak to our regular GB voice, Brian Dugan. Good accent or bad?
It wasn't very bad, Nana. But I have an Irish accent anyway. So.
Oh, well, there you go. So he's got Scottish accent. He's got Irish. So, Brian, you must have been watching this situation develop. You know, what have you been thinking?
Well, Nana, I mean, it's a very serious situation for so many people, for everyone. I don't believe that trickle-down economics works, especially at a time when the country is faced with so many challenges that are placing so many people in the country under a terrible pressure at this time. We have millions of families right across the country who are struggling to pay the rising costs of fuel, rent, food, etc. And the Prime Minister and Chancellor have a cunning plan. And that cunning plan is cutting taxes for corporations and for rich people. Trickle-down economics. A smaller state, we see the Prime Minister and Chancellor are going to be dogmatic about it, and they're not for turning. I believe the approach is discredited and it's inadequate, and it's based on data in the United States.
Well, can I ask you, Brian, what did you vote then? Did you vote Conservative, can you say? Or what party would you have allegiance towards?
Well, I mean, my allegiance, I suppose, would not be to the Conservatives, shall we put it. But equally, I don't think it's a party. This is a cross-divide situation. This is a real challenge for everybody, and the country simply has to pull together on this. And I think that it's that dogmatic approach that they seem to be very embedded in terms of what they're going to do, and they're not going to turn on this, and almost can't now turn on this. And I think they're leading the country down a really bad path. I don't see how it works. It's been discredited in the United States. The data there shows that over a period of decades, that in fact it stretched back from I think 1947 to 2015, and in no case was it true that there was a correlation.
I'm going to have to stop you there. Oh, goodness me. Brian, well, we'll have to chat over a cup of tea sometime, because I can see you can talk. Brian Dugan, thank you so much for your thoughts. He's there in Edinburgh with a beautiful Irish accent. Thank you so much. Well, today I've been asking, does trickle-down economics work? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts. Elliot says it doesn't work. We need something more like trickle-up, with paths made so it's far faster for the poorest to aspire and succeed. Mary said trickle-down economics used to work when people were more generous. Now immensely rich people hold on to tax breaks. They don't reinvest in business, which creates jobs for more people. And says, what has happened to the old song, money makes the world go around? Back we go to the old politics of envy, misery, and nothing being done. Well, there's also a poll up on Twitter throughout the show, and I'm asking, does trickle-down economics work? Currently, it's a bit Brexity. 51% of you say yes, 49% of you say no. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll be expecting NATO's Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg to hold a press conference following that announcement from President Vladimir Putin that 4 more areas of Ukraine now belong to Russia. I'll also speak to 2 expert guests asking what sort of fallout we can expect to come next. That's on the way after this.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio, and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
This is GB News, the People's Channel. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, very shortly, we're expecting to hear from NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg in Brussels. Now, it follows the announcements earlier from President Vladimir Putin, who declared that 4 regions in Ukraine are now Russian. And that comes after a series of criticised sham referendums. So joining me now is former Moscow correspondent Danny Armstrong. Danny, OK, so we are in a bit of a situation, aren't we? Because these places were Ukraine. Now, apparently, sham referendums. We don't know the full story, but from what I can understand, that is the case. And so now there's a situation that if any of the West get involved with these so-called Russian territories, we are at war.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. The 4 regions, we have Zaporizhia, Kherson, which are in the southwest, and the 2 republics in the Donbass region, that's Luhansk and Donetsk. Of course, Russia annexing these parts of Ukraine means that if there is an attack on those parts of on the land, Russia can defend its territorial integrity with any means necessary. Of course, that also means nuclear weapons as well. Now, for me, as what we can see and what's happened in Ukraine for the past few weeks, those territorial losses that Russia's suffered in the northeast, the retreat all the way from Kharkiv to the Donbass region, it was kind of some kind of morale boosting operation, if you want to call it that, from Vladimir Putin. He kind of widened the goalposts and made his main goal to liberate the people of the LNR and DNR republics. Now, his pretext for war was the denazification of Ukraine, the demilitarization of Ukraine, and the liberation of LNR and DNR. Now, of course, after he realized that Ukraine wasn't going to be defeated in a military sense, denazification, well, good luck with that. We all know that that was a lie for the most part. And that just comes down to which is the liberation of the LNR and DNR republics. Now, he's extended that to Kherson and Zaporizhia, but as we saw when he was giving the speech at the ceremony of the Kremlin just a couple of hours ago, he broke into chants of Russia, Russia. It was kind of a rallying kind of war cry. This has all been done really to kind of boost the morale of the Russian people, which is at an all-time low after mobilization, and it's not going to get any better after the annexation. And can I just say, it's the first time, because I was in Moscow when Vladimir Putin recognized the independence of LNR and DNR. Of course, they've been annexed now. Now, I've felt the same trepidation, that dark, ominous feeling as I did in Moscow and the people that I spoke to for the first time today.
Really?
Since that day. What that means, I don't know, but it really does mean, for me personally, at least, that all is not well.
Not well, is it? Right. Well, joining me also is Defence and Foreign Affairs Editor at the Daily Telegraph, Coughlin. Con, talk to me then. Vladimir Putin, he's signing a speech and declaration. What does that mean?
Well, it shows, to my mind, that he's in desperate trouble. That he's tried to conquer these territories militarily and hold on to them, and he can't do that. So what he's doing is this sham referendum or referendums in the 4 provinces that Danny mentioned, and he's basically trying to take them in this sham way. But I don't think anybody at all is convinced of what he's doing. And we've seen the reaction from the world. We've seen America putting more sanctions on Russia. And we've seen the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, saying that he's going to try and fast-track Ukraine's membership into the NATO alliance. So I think, for all the chanting that's going on in Moscow and the crowds they've managed to assemble around the Kremlin, this is actually an admission of defeat by Putin.
Well, some people wouldn't say that because, I mean, now this territory allegedly belongs to Russia. Sounds to me like he, in a sense, may have planned this, and it feels like he actually wants war.
Well, he's got war now, and he's had war for 7 months, and he's losing the war. It's a war he cannot win now, which is why he's been forced into these desperate measures, as far as I'm concerned. I think if the war was going fine, he would be on the offensive, hoovering up more territory, securing the gains he's got. But he can't do that militarily because the Russian military is collapsing. They've lost a lot of territory already up in the northeast around Kharkiv. Kherson, the big city in the south, the gateway to the Crimea, as it's known, is also under threat, and with the possibility of Russia losing tens of thousands of troops who are now encircled. So, on the battlefield, the war is not going well, and that's why he's resorting to these desperate measures.
Well, I want to bring Danny back into the conversation. Danny, obviously, with the pipeline as well, there was the bombing of that, or the destruction, in a sense, of that pipeline. Who do you think was responsible for that? I mean, or why would there be a benefit to, say, Putin, or who benefits from that?
I think the short answer is nobody. No one is really going to benefit from blowing up any of the Nord Streams. Any of the pipelines is going to be what it's going to do. Basically, is mean that millions of people are going to be without ready gas. And there's been a lot of posturing on both sides. Nord Stream 2 has been ready for some months. I think the reason why it wasn't ratified, the reason why it wasn't accepted on the EU's part, is because the bloc didn't want to increase its dependency on Russia for gas. That was also backed by the US. I mean, the US had been mooted that they wanted to tie up their own energy deal with the EU. This happened months and months before February 24th. Maybe it was a kind of a foresight from the bloc, from Europe. But what we're seeing now is just posturing from both sides. We can't say who's blown it up. The West is saying, of course, probably Russia. I don't see how it benefits Russia really, kind of in any way. So I would kind of drop those suspicions.
Well, it does seem suspicious that somebody would do such a thing. But what you're seeing now, if you're watching on TV, is Red Square. And it's kind of, they are having a celebration for the annexing of the regions in Ukraine, which, you know, there's actually a musician, there's a guy singing there as well. Danny, is this the sort of thing, is this what they did with Crimea?
Yeah, in fact, a couple of months ago, there was the 8-year celebration of the annexation of Crimea at Luzhniki Stadium, which is it's Russia's version of Wembley Stadium. It's all, again, posturing. It doesn't really reflect what's happening on the streets in Moscow. There's people being arrested for protesting, people who are against the war being manhandled by the police, bundled off into police vans, and then handed their declaration summons, the summons, draft summons to the front line in Ukraine. So basically what we have a situation where people who are against the war are being called to serve in that war. Now, I just want to return to the fact that there might be, or it's been mooted that there might be sort of World War III. It's very, very dangerous words, very dangerous vocabulary there. But what Putin invoked in his speech at the Kremlin in the ceremony of the annexation of the 4 regions, he evoked his Munich 2007 speech, which returned to the expansion of NATO, his concerns over that, and the concerns for the US's monopoly on global relations. He's basically wiped the floor with that. He said the Anglo-Saxons are
what can I just say?
sabotaging.
Going live.
Good evening. President Putin has now claimed 4 more regions of Ukraine as part of Russia. This is the largest attempted annexation of European territory by force since the Second World War. Another 15% of Ukraine's territory, an area roughly the size of Portugal, illegally seized by Russia at gunpoint. The sham referendums were engineered in Moscow and imposed on Ukraine in total violation of international law. This land grab is illegal and illegitimate. NATO allies do not and will not recognize any of this territory as part of Russia. We call on all states to reject Russia's blatant attempts at territorial conquest. These lands are Ukraine. Donetsk is Ukraine. Luhansk is Ukraine. Kherson is Ukraine. Zaporizhzhia is Ukraine, just like Crimea is Ukraine. This is the second time Russia has taken Ukrainian territory by force. But it does not change the nature of the conflict. This remains Russia's brutal war of aggression against Ukraine. And it does not change our commitment to support Ukraine. NATO is not party to the conflict, but we provide support to Ukraine so it can uphold its right for self-defense enshrined in the UN Charter. Ours is a defensive alliance. We stand united and determined to defend and protect every NATO ally and every inch of Allied territory. This is a pivotal moment. Putin has mobilized hundreds of thousands of more troops, engaged in irresponsible nuclear saber-rattling, and now illegally annexed more Ukrainian territory. Together, this represents the most serious escalation since the start of the war. None of this shows strength. It shows weakness. It is an admission that the war is not going to plan, and that Putin has utterly failed in his strategic objectives. Putin bears full responsibility to end it, to end the imminent suffering of the brave Ukrainian people, to end the energy and food crisis that is affecting so many around the world. If Russia stops fighting, there will be peace. If Ukraine stops fighting, it will cease to exist as an independent sovereign nation in Europe. NATO reaffirms our unwavering support for Ukraine's independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. We remain resolute in providing support to Ukraine as it continues to defend itself against Russia's aggression, for as long as it takes. And with that, I'm ready to take your questions.
And we'll have time for just a couple of questions. We'll start with the news agency.
News Agency of Ukraine, Dmytro Shkurko. We in Ukraine have no doubt will prevail and liberate our territories. But a few hours ago, Ukrainian leadership showed us...
So Jens Stoltenberg there giving a talk to NATO with regard to the annexation of the 4 parts of Ukraine. Well, joining me in the studio, Danny Armstrong is still here. Also, Christine Hamilton and Andrew Pearce have returned. I'm going to come straight to you, Danny, first, because obviously you are correspondent. You were there in Russia. You're now back in the UK. What do you think now? I mean, NATO has spoken and said that they will continue to support Ukraine and will ignore those 4 territories that are annexed.
I think it has an obligation to ignore those referendums, certainly if they think they're a sham referendum. We know Kherson was seen as a kind of a hub of resistance since the start of the war. There were people running around on the top of Russian tanks that they captured. There were people protesting in the streets pretty much every day. And for Russia to come out and say that there's 87% of people who've turned out, there was a 67% turnout around about in Kherson. For 87% of that to say that they want to be part of Russia is, I think it sets alarm bells ringing. There are people in the LNR and DNR republics who consider themselves Russian. That's right on the border with Russia. That some of them actually would welcome being part of Russia, but that doesn't make it right, and it certainly doesn't make it legal.
What do you think?
It's just terrifying,
Yeah.
because he's a madman, and proof positive, yet another mad, deranged, rambling speech. But as been discussed by people who know much more about this than I do, if we get into a conflict in these annexed regions, are we then declaring, is Russia then going to say that's war with the West, because of our arms? We're continuing to supply arms. This will reinforce, in my view, Truss's commitment to give an extra $2 billion next year. Some people watching this will think, hey, we haven't got the money, but we have to keep the Ukraine fully armed.
I couldn't agree more. I think we do have to support Ukraine. And yes, it's very difficult when people are struggling with eating and heating. But $2 billion is not an enormous amount of money when you compare it to total government budgets. And I think it's terrifying. Even if Putin drops dead, and there are all sorts of rumours that he may not be very well, there are people behind him. So it isn't just Putin. There are apparently, what do I know about it? But apparently people who know better, there are people stacked up behind him who will take exactly the same view. And he's now trying to drag people up to conscript them. I mean, there are terrible videos going around of people, Russians, young Russian men, who are deliberately having their arms and their legs broken so they don't have to be... I mean, they are horrifying videos, so they don't have to be called up. But no, the West has to stand firm. The West has to stand firm, and the speech we've just heard is absolutely right. But of course we can't recognise
But we're in his line of fire. I mean, from the moment this started, I thought, well, it feels to me like he's after the United Kingdom because we're isolated, we're in a separate bit. You know, he's obviously not going to, you know, put out a nuclear weapon or any weapon. And I'm not scaremongering. I'm just, you know, putting it out there that actually it would be unwise for him to launch any sort of nuclear attack near Russia, because if so, then it's you can't just cut off the radiation like a sort of line and say you're not coming here. So I suspect that if, you know, we are quite a target. I mean, am I wrong?
No, I would agree entirely. I'd say it's very dangerous rhetoric that's also been set up. Just before we cut to Jens Stoltenberg, I was talking about Putin's speech in the Kremlin, which evoked his 2007 speech in Munich, which was all about the expansion of NATO eastwards. It was a rallying cry against international law, what he sees as the frailties and the faults of international law, and the USA's monopoly on global relations. Now, what this kind of means, it means that this proxy war that the West is fighting by giving aid to Ukraine, however morally right it might be, that has a real chance of escalating. This is an escalation in itself, the annexation of the 4 regions. So it does mean that it's an escalation. It does mean that it's very, very dangerous and very, very worrying.
But I just want to come back to something you said, though, because what Jens Stoltenberg said there is if Russia stops fighting, there will be peace. If Ukraine stops fighting, it will cease to exist. He said we remain resolute to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. Now, he's got a point. He's got a point.
Surely we had no choice but to support Ukraine, because if we hadn't supported Ukraine, well, say we, the West, and we've led the way, they would have folded by now.
Of course.
So what choice did we have? And now we've put our hand to that particular plough. We have to keep it
my point is Vladimir Putin's words mean that our support could mean a further escalation. This is not saying that we shouldn't support Ukraine. It's not saying that it's not morally right. It's me just outlining Putin's rhetoric now and how serious it actually is. As he said last week, we can never underestimate Vladimir Putin. I certainly didn't think he'd invade, but the recognition of the independence of the DNR and LNR as it was before 24th of February is what we're seeing now here with the other 2 regions.
And he is waging economic war on the West. That's what he's doing with fuel prices. The only currency that's got up against the dollar is the Russian ruble. That's because so many countries are still buying their wretched gas from Putin, Germany in particular. And that's why we have got to become self-sufficient in Britain.
We really do.
Do you think he punctured the pipeline?
I do.
You think
I
so?
do too. I think he did, because people will say, why would he puncture his own pipeline? Well, because people won't suspect him of doing it.
Well, listen, we'll be obviously following the war here on GB News, so stay with us. Thank you very much to Danny Armstrong and, of course, my panellists, Christine Hamilton and Andrew Pearce. Now, moving on, despite initial optimism after Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng's mini-budget reveal last Friday, the pound has spiralled down in value and UK financial markets have been in turmoil. In an extraordinary move, the Bank of England launched a temporary bond-buying programme, and the plan there was to prevent material risk to the UK financial stability. And the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, rebuked the mini-budget. They stated that the Treasury's fiscal policies were playing at odds with the Bank of England's monetary policy in dealing with interest rates. And during the Labour Party conference, Sir Keir Starmer reacted to the budget.
Government has clearly lost control of the economy. And unlike other situations where it may be a world event, an unexpected event that causes this sort of crisis, this is self-inflicted. This was made in Downing Street last Friday. And for what? For uncosted tax breaks for those earning hundreds of thousands of pounds. And so what the government needs to do now is recall Parliament and abandon this budget.
However, the government remains adamant that tax cuts are the key to rapid growth, to push back against rising inflation and interest rates, which have already caused 40% of mortgage deals to be withdrawn. So what do you think? Has the Chancellor got it right or wrong? I'm joined now by Conservative MP Mark Francois. Mark, thank you for joining me. OK, so the budget, your thoughts on it?
I thought it was a good budget. And I thought the primary aim of it was to boost growth in the British economy. You can't tax your way out of a pandemic. You have to grow your way out of a pandemic. And I believe that this was the right course of action. And there's been some criticism of the decision to reduce the top rate of tax from 45 pence to 40. But if you look at the historical precedents, Nana, in 1988, in a famously radical budget, Nigel Lawson cut the top rate from 60%, as it was, to 40. What happened? the tax rate, the tax take, the money coming into the Treasury went up as a result. Brown put it back up to 50%. In 2013, George Osborne cut it back to 45%. What happened? The money coming into the Treasury went up. So the empirical evidence is that when you cut the top rate of tax, you actually increase the amount of money coming into the Treasury because you give people more incentives to invest, to take a risk, to start a business. So Labour's politics of envy, I don't think, are going to be actually convincing with regard to the British electorate.
So what do you think then? Because as you said, the politics of envy, what would you say to those people though? Because a lot of people are saying, oh, well, it's like Robin Hood in reverse and, you know, comments of that nature.
Well, no, you see, I understand the point, but I don't think the facts bear that out.
No.
Why? One, because we're also reducing national insurance contributions from next month by 1.25%. So that will be more money in people's pay packets, and that affects virtually all working people in this country by Christmas. And then in April of next year, we're going to bring forward the 1p reduction in income tax that was due in 2024. We're going to bring it forward to 2023 to encourage growth in the economy. So there you have two tax savings, more money in people's pockets for people on, you know, ordinary quotes, ordinary income. So this is by no means just for people at the top end of the earnings bracket. Just about everybody who is working in the UK will benefit from one or other of those two measures that I've just mentioned.
Well, I just want Mark then. So what do you think though? A lot of people still criticising Kwarteng, Kwasi Kwarteng. Do you think there should be any policies that he should consider U-turning on?
Well, whenever a government announces a budget, there is some criticism of it, you know, just as the sun rises and the sun sets. But, you know, we've had news. Well, look at the context. You know, we've had a pandemic. There is now a war in the Ukraine that you've just been talking about. And yes, I agree with the Secretary General. I think what Putin's done is a sign of weakness rather than of strength. But nonetheless, this has clearly had an effect on global energy prices, and that's been inflationary. So we're seeing inflation rising around the world. It's now 10% in Germany. It's now 10% in the Eurozone. And central banks across the world are increasing interest rates in order to try and combat that inflation. So what the Bank of England are doing here in the UK is by no means unique or out of kilter with what other central banks are doing around the world. So I think you have to see the budget in that context, because inflation is now a worldwide problem. And so we are just one part of that. And the Bank of England is reacting, as indeed are many other central banks around the world, by raising interest rates to compensate. And I think there are some people at the BBC, frankly, who've become almost hysterical about this.
Well, I mean, we've heard some of that. But you did mention Putin. And so whilst we're on the subject, what's your view on what's going on now with his annexation of those 4 parts of Ukraine?
Well, I think this is almost a sign of desperation. I mean, when you look at the so-called results of these referenda, they are so overwhelmingly one way, when we know that in those regions, in the real world, this would be a very controversial question. I mean, these are sort of, you know, like results from the North Korean Electoral Commission. And there's lots of, you know, anecdotal evidence of people being forced to vote at gunpoint. So these are completely rigged results. We have to make that point clearly. He's done it for a political purpose. I think it's a sign almost of desperation. This war has not gone the way that he intended. They thought, and to be fair, so did many analysts, that they would win within a week. The Ukrainians have proved to be made of much sterner stuff. With our help and that of America and others, they have fought an incredibly valiant defence, and now they're counterattacking. So Putin is losing this war. He's under pressure from his own hawks and his own veterans, and now he's doubled down by trying to come up with these rigged ballots. These are the actions of a man who's losing, not of a man who's winning.
Well, Mark, thank you for your thoughts. Stay right there. I'm just now joined in the studio by Shankar Singham. He's the CEO of Competary and former Competary. What's that? Competary.
Name of my company.
Yeah, I'll say Competary, that's the thing. Right, well, I want to ask you then, OK, so we've got this situation, obviously, with Ukraine. We'll put that to one side. We've been talking about it all afternoon. But with regard to Liz Truss's policies, a lot of people are saying that, you know, it's ruining the standing of the UK and the rest of the world, But as Mark's pointed out, a lot of other countries are raising interest rates, and this is a global phenomenon. What's your take on all of this?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand with the announcement on Friday why they're doing these things and what they are doing.
Right.
So in terms of why they're doing these things, you have to go back, 25, 30 years. Governments of all kinds of descriptions, left, right, coalition, etc., have allowed a lot of distortions and regulatory barriers to sort of creep into the economy without doing really anything about them. And this has led to increases in costs. That's why the cost of living in the UK is so high. We've had a tax burden that's been gradually growing and growing and growing on people. And so this is the first time, actually, that a government has said, we've got to fix this. We've got to lower costs. We've got to make sure that people's weekly shopping basket of food and transportation, energy, all of that stuff has got to go down. The prices have got to go down. We've got to start creating an economy which is more dynamic and vibrant, where we encourage people to set up businesses. We want to attract and we want to encourage economic activity. So to do all those things, that means significant reform. And we haven't really done it, as I say, for a good 25, 30 years. So, in fact, we've done the reverse. So this is going to be tough. Now, the first step of this, as Mark Francois pointed out earlier on, was to reduce the upper rate. Now, the 45% rate that went down to 40% was removed. That is almost, that's a £2 billion cost, which is virtually, in these terms, very, very low.
Well, we're sending that to Ukraine, aren't we?
It's a very small amount. I mean, by comparison, the price, the freeze on the price of energy, that's a much bigger amount. And that's what has spooked, to a certain extent, the markets. But the good news there is that that borrowing cost, which was supposed to be about 160 billion, CBR, an economics consultancy, just did a report today, actually, that it's really more like 60 billion.
Okay.
And that, in fact, in 2025, 26, the government would have a small surplus. So these numbers vary a lot. I think people have to sort of recognise that you get a lot of numbers thrown at you, and there's not a great deal of science that goes into these numbers. Sometimes they do vary a lot. So you are seeing that piece of it is going down. So the borrowing cost is going down, which is good news. The 1% reduction in the lower tax rate is good news. Now, what they are going to do, this is the beginning of a programme, is a series of reforms on what's called the supply side. So essentially, it's going to be things like energy, it's going to be things like planning, it's going to be those kinds of things that will significantly lower the cost of living for people. Now, the problem we have, and you've seen the beginning of this with the reaction, the problem we have is that whenever you try to reform anything, the people who benefit from the distortions and the barriers and so on will fight very hard. What you're seeing now is the interest rates have been artificially low, again depressed by distortion. Easy money is the sort of class A drug of financial markets. They become dependent on it. The mortgage industry has become dependent on it, and they've created all kinds of products on the back of it that don't make sense. Wouldn't make sense in a normal operating environment with slightly higher interest rates. And interest rates are going to have to go up. And that means that all the people who've benefited from all these things are going to fight. And that's what you're seeing now. And it is really important that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, I think, are very robust, continue to drive this through. But I think, to be fair, should also communicate with the people and explain what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Yeah, well, I'm with you, actually. I think they need to be robust. We have put up with the low interest rates, which I think have actually depressed the economy in the long run. Savers haven't been making anything out of their money. If you go for an ISA, you're not going to get anything out of it. You might as well just spend the money on something that might appreciate in value. But there isn't. But I think they do need to hold their nerve. It's been good to...
And a lot of people don't have mortgages. A lot of poorer people, a lot of younger people are renting. And And as they will tell you, the cost of rental and the cost of that aspect of your housing has gone up enormously because of all these distortions. So it is tough to do, but we are going to have to do it.
Well, we're going to have to do it. Listen, and hopefully Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng can hold their nerve. CEO of Comfortair and former trade advisor to the UK Secretary of State for International Trade, that's Shankar Singham. And because the Conservative MP Mark Francois also joined me. Stay with me because there's loads on the way. A great British debate this hour. I'm asking, should misgendering someone be a hate crime? We'll be talking about that after the weather.
Hello again, Aidan McGivern here with the latest from the Met Office. Rain, heavy at times, will cross the country during the rest of the day, accompanied by strong winds and gales in places. But showers will follow the main area of rain, so still further spells of rain to come into the northwest once these weather fronts have moved through. And these are the features that are crossing central parts of the UK, tied into a deep area of low pressure. That's what's bringing those strong winds to the north and the west. The rain, as it clears the southeast, will also be accompanied by gales through the Dover Strait, so very blustery here for a time, 55-mile-per-hour wind gusts. However, by midnight and shortly after the rain clears out of the way, clear spells follow, but also quite a number of showers. And with a breezy night to come, well, it's not going to be as cold as it was last night, with temperatures at around 8 to 11 Celsius as we start off Saturday. And bright blue skies for many first thing Saturday. Further showers from the word go across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Western England and Wales. And there'll be showers through central and eastern parts heading into the afternoon. In between the showers, still a stiff breeze, but some shelter from the breeze, and it will feel pleasant enough, 18, perhaps 19 Celsius. There won't be much shelter from the showers, though. They will come through at a pace. That means they won't last that long. And into the evening, many of the showers in the south will disappear. Further showers to come for Scotland and Northern Ireland, northwest England. Meanwhile, towards the southwest, the clouds thicken. We'll see some more persistent damp weather into the far southwest by the end of the night. 13 Celsius here. I think more typically 8 to 11 Celsius elsewhere across the UK. And still some sunshine around first thing across central and eastern England, North Wales. Further showers for Scotland, Northern Ireland and for parts of northern England. But in the far south, thicker cloud and some spells of rain through the day, particularly towards the southwest. Monday, drier in the south, but further rain or showers in the north.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Good afternoon. It's coming up to 28 minutes after 5 o'clock. We are GB News, the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, it is time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should misgendering someone be seen as a hate crime? The justice system has been called into review after Sussex police vetted hateful comments towards a convicted transgender paedophile. Now, the constabulary took to Twitter to police the use of pronouns with a statement saying, Sussex police do not tolerate any hateful comments towards their gender identity, regardless of crimes committed. This is irrelevant to the crime that has been committed. Sussex police later removed the tweet and issued a statement saying, an earlier reply to a comment on Twitter was inconsistent with our usual style of engagement. We apologise for this and have removed the comment. We recognise the rights of the public to express themselves freely within the boundaries of the law. So with the use of pronouns being more and more stringent, we have to wonder, do police have their priorities right? Is disavowing the misgender...
disavowing the misgendering.
Disavowing the misgendering. Sorry, my teeth just got stuck on my lips then. Sorry about that. That does happen when you get to about 50. Yes, does disavowing the misgendering a convicted paedophile protecting their rights? Or is it just another performative virtue signal? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should misgendering someone be seen as a hate crime? Right, to discuss this, I am joined by teacher and journalist Debbie Hayton. Debbie, right, I've put my teeth back. What do you think? Sussex police, there's a tweet, they're enforcing the law. What do you think?
Well, to answer your question, misgendering shouldn't be a hate crime. It's simply pronouns are descriptive terms to describe somebody. Sussex police have got themselves into a big problem here. The culture appears to me to be so ingrained that when somebody objects to a convicted paedophile being referred to as a woman, immediately they're accused by implication of being hateful. It's A, nonsense, and B, quite concerning.
So, I mean, yes, most people would say that, but I'm amazed that the police would even consider doing that, going and getting involved in something like that. Are you concerned that this individual, is actually being sent now to a women's prison? So I hear. So obviously they're identifying as a woman. They're now being sent to a woman's prison.
Yeah, it's deeply concerning what is actually happening. But going back to Sussex Police, you asked the question then, Nana, about what was happening there. I always ask people, who told you this and why did you believe them? And in the case of Sussex Police, it's who's been training Sussex Police and why were those trainers actually recommended to Sussex Police and why did Sussex Police choose them? What's going on here?
Why does it go to the point as well? These are loads of questions. I wish they'd answered them. But then this individual is then being sent to a women's prison. This is because right. I understand, gender pronouns. People want to be called he, she, whatever. I'll go along with that. That's fine. But then there comes a point where this issue is then taken as very seriously. Where when it comes to a crime, you can now say, well, I'm a woman, so I need to go to a women's prison. You could have all the tackles still there and you end up in a women's prison. This individual is being sent to a women's prison because they identify as a woman. Is this going too far?
Well, that's a big problem because it's how do we include trans women such as me in society in groups? Some women can choose whether to include or not. But when we're talking about women in prison can't choose who to include in their group. They're assigned to prison and they can't say, well, I prefer not to share this space with this individual. Those women have no choice. And women in prison are among the most vulnerable groups in society. The women tend to get sent to prison for totally different things to what men tend to get to prison for. And this person who has been sent to prison, the crimes which have been committed are most typically committed by males. According to Ministry of Justice figures, about 98% of sexual offences are committed by males.
Debbie Hayton, thank you very much. She's a teacher and a journalist. That's also joined by LGBT activist Peter Tatchell. Peter, thank you very much for joining me. What do you make of Sussex Police's response?
Well, first, let me say we're talking about two different things. There is biological sex, which is a reality, which must be respected. There's also gender identity, which is a reality and also must be respected. Both are equally valid, even though they are different. Difference is okay, but both are equally valid. Now, when it comes to misgendering people, I think it's certainly disrespectful and not courteous. You know, I like to, wherever possible, be respectful of how people see themselves. But I don't think it should be a hate crime. I think criminalising misgendering is a step too far. I think that Sussex police have made a blunder on this. And it's all the more a blunder because Sally Ann Dixon committed these horrendous abuses against children when she was a male. And therefore, those crimes should be recorded as perpetrated by a male, even though she now identifies as a trans woman. When it comes to prisons, certainly if a trans woman has a history as previously a male person or male-identified person abusing physically or sexually other women, I think there are big issues about whether they should be placed in a women's prison. Certainly they should be placed in a segregation unit, and certainly if they mix with biological women, they should be under very close supervision. I totally get and understand the need to respect women's safety and protection in prisons where, as we have heard, the women prisoners don't have any choice.
So would you say that they should go into a female prison still, but just be segregated somewhere else? Is that what you're saying?
I think basically, but this is different. This is a case of a convicted paedophile who sexually abused children. Well, there are no children in a women's prison, so presumably Sally Ann Dixon is not going to be a threat to other women. But even so, I would expect that given the gravity of the offences committed, that Sally Ann be kept under very close observation and supervision. And I think that's right, both for her sake and for the sake of other women prisoners.
Peter Tatchell, thank you very much. It's good to talk to you. Well, that's his thoughts, but what are yours? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Get in touch as ever in the usual way. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should misgendering be a hate crime? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Andrew Pearce and also Christine Hamilton. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Nana. It's 5:35. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. NATO's Secretary-General has described Russia's annexation of 4 areas of Ukraine as in total violation of international law. President Vladimir Putin announced Moscow would take control of the regions across southern and eastern Ukraine after so-called referendums held there. Jens Stoltenberg says Putin's action should be rejected by all countries around the world.
The sham referendums were engineered in Moscow and imposed on Ukraine in total violation of international law. This land grab is illegal and illegitimate. NATO allies do not and will not recognize any of this territory as part of Russia.
The Office for Budget Responsibility says it will deliver its initial forecast on the impact of the government's policies on the 7th of October. It follows a meeting with the Prime Minister and Chancellor attempting to reassure financial markets. Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng are facing criticism amid rising mortgage bills and instability after last Friday's mini-budget. Merseyside police have arrested a 40-year-old man on suspicion of assisting an offender in connection with the murder of Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool last month. The 9-year-old was shot in her home in Dovecot in August. Her mother was also injured. Well, yesterday, a 34-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of murder and is being questioned by police. Officers continue to appeal for information. An inquest has concluded that the death of Molly Russell was caused by an act of self-harm, while the schoolgirl suffered from depression and the negative effects of online content. The coroner found that the 14-year-old had been a frequent user of Instagram and Pinterest, viewing thousands of posts related to self-harm and suicide. Molly's father, Ian Russell, says far too many people are struggling like she did. TV online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.111 and 1.136 euros. And the price of gold currently stands at £1,502 and 55 pence per ounce.
We are GB News. And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Back to our great British debate this hour. I'm asking, should misgendering someone be seen as a hate crime? Now, the priorities of Sussex police have been called into question after their Twitter feed suggested that misgendering a convicted paedophile who was born male but transitioned to become a trans woman would be a hate crime. So with actions like these, we have to wonder, is policing misguided? Was this all a bit performative, or were they onto something? So today I'm asking, should misgendering someone be a hate crime? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by Andrew Pearce and also Christine Hamilton. Right, I'll start with you, Christine. Misgendering, he, she, they, them.
No, of course it shouldn't be a hate crime. There are something like, is it 50 or is it 150 different pronouns?
Right.
I mean, now, there's so many. You read them out once on one of your shows I was on, and you read some of them out. On and on and on. It's ridiculous. I mean, you know, you get somebody's name wrong. It's not if you get somebody's pronoun wrong, it's not the end of the world. It's certainly not a hate crime, and it probably wasn't deliberate anyway. And as for the idea that this person should go to a woman's prison, it is appalling. I have never, ever listened to Peter Tatchell for as long as I did and agreed with every word he said. Boy, has that guy mellowed. Of course they shouldn't go to a women's prison, as he said. I think it was him who said, you've got the most vulnerable women in society, or some of them, in there. The last thing they want is a man in there. And most sexual, we were talking about this in the break, most sexual offenders, especially against young children, are put in isolation anyway, for their own protection. I'm not saying that the women would gang up and attack him, but in men's prison, that's very often what happens. So they're put in isolation for their own. But no, I mean, the police have gone mad. I mean, what was it they were all doing, the Macarena the other day? I mean, honestly, it just gets worse and worse. At least they had the sense to delete the tweet.
I completely agree with Christine. Just appalling. What has happened to the police? No wonder confidence in the police has slumped because they just get their priorities are wrong again and again. Now, we've got to be encouraged by the first steps of Sir Mark Rowley, the new boss of the Metropolitan Police, because he said there's going to be a 100-day blitz on crime. He's going to put people behind bars and he's going to be less interested in his officers going on the internet to look for so-called hate crimes. This hate crime is turned into an industry. As a gay man, if someone calls me a puff, I could complain to the police and say it's a hate crime. They would be duty-bound to investigate. It's not a hate crime. It's just a stupid piece of abuse. That's all it is. And we've got to get over it. And also, why do we care about what a convicted paedophile is called? Call him what you want. A convicted paedophile is evil.
Exactly. Well said.
Well, this show is nothing without you and your thoughts. Let's welcome our great British voice, your opportunity to tell us what you think about the topics we're discussing. Where should we go? Should we go to Milton Keynes, have a chat with Dr. Seshni Mudlia? She does talk a lot, to be fair. Oh, cracky, all of them. There's 4 of them. Let's start with Seshni first. Seshni, let's start with you. Right, Seshni, what's your view on this then?
Good evening, Nana, and everyone. I'll try not to speak so much, Nana, but I agree with all your panelists, with Debbie, with Andrew, Peter, and with Christine. It's not a hate crime. It does boil down to respect, though. I do feel that misgendering someone can be hurtful, so I think we should try and educate ourselves, as Debbie was saying, education, and people should be aware of what the different pronouns are and use the right gender. And if anyone misgenders, we should apologize and ask someone, just asking them what they would like to be called. I think that's a way forward.
You'd think, wouldn't you?
But it's definitely not a hate crime.
No, that's the end. Right. Right, next we're going to hear from Alan McNeely, who's there in Grimsby.
Afternoon, Nana. Absolutely, it shouldn't be a hate crime. It's more nonsense, and we've got enough nonsense going on in the world already without adding more to it. I think Sussex Police got it completely and utterly wrong, so hopefully that'll be the end of it.
Succinct. It's not like you either. And lastly, let's go to Mike Donovan, who's in Oxfordshire. Mike, I'll time you. No, go for it, Mike. What are your thoughts?
OK. Hi, Nana. Very good to see you. Of course, it shouldn't be a hate crime. At the end of the day, we need to see the police actually dealing with criminal offences. And I think the panel are quite right. Many women wouldn't want a transgender male in their prison or in their cell. And I think we need to just focus on the right things. And I was looking the other day at the last Labour government between the Blair-Brown one, 4,380 new offences, criminal offences were created between 97. And this is the lunacy of our society. These offences are being created everywhere. And of course, I've had experience directly where we've had, criminal damage to property, but the police never come out. So, at the end of the day, good policing is about dealing with priority issues. And, at the end of the day, under Section 4 of the Public Order Act 1986, it's not a hate crime. It was there for a specific purpose, to stop racial abuse. And
No, there's no more and. There's no more and, Mike. I'm joking. Mike, thank you very much, Seshni and Alan. Thank you very much. Be quiet. Thank you.
Have I got 2 seconds?
Those are our great British voices. Thank you so much. Let's quickly come back to Christine.
Well, if anything's been a hate crime recently, it's what Rupert Hook said about Kwasi Kwarteng. That could be classed as a hate crime, far more than me calling you she or whatever.
Yeah, and you made the point. Why haven't the police talked to her?
Why haven't the police talked to her?
Well, somehow the Labour Party appear to be 33 points ahead. I don't think so.
For now.
For now, let's see.
For now, it won't last.
Well, look, here's another story that caught my eye today. Local councils have requested more powers in order to tackle childhood obesity. It's an epidemic that's apparently swept the nation. According to figures from the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities, the number of obese children between reception and 6 years is on the rise. Councillors want to limit the amount of fast food adverts near schools, as well as wanting to break up groups of takeaway restaurants in the local area. They're also looking to give more children from low-income families healthy start vouchers to ensure that they're getting their 5 a day. Andrew, Christine, your thoughts on this? Andrew, I'll start with you first.
I was greatly encouraged to read, I don't know if it's going to happen, that the Truss government is going to to stop this ridiculous idea that you can't have these special offers in supermarkets. Are they called bog off, buy one?
Bog offs, yes.
Yeah,
bog offs.
because never more have we needed cheaper food for families because of the cost of living crisis. What business has a Tory government got putting up the price of supermarket bills for families who are struggling? Get rid of all of this. It's up to parents if they've got fat kids. Parents sort it out. It's not the state.
Well,
it's not the load of the state.
You don't get fat without eating too much food.
Exactly.
Well, I can't remember exactly what the figure is, but of the number of obese children, something like 95% of obese children have obese parents.
Yeah.
So that's it. It's talk about trickle-down economics. It's trickle-down fatness. And but you know, it is a really serious problem. People say it's going to cost the health service a fortune. In fact, it isn't going to cost quite as much as you might think because fat people die on average earlier than thin people, so they don't have all the old age cost associated with thinner people who live longer and cost more. But I mean, something's got to be done, but it cannot be done with nanny state measures.
Yes.
I like the idea of giving people vouchers for healthy food. Here you are, here's a fruit voucher, here's a voucher for, you know, whatever is healthy, so that they have to spend it on something healthy.
Well, the government should
instead of onion rings.
I'm glad the government, and I'm glad Liz Truss and Gozzi and her government appear to be getting out of the meddling of what I eat. Listen, it's up to me what I eat, and if I put it in my gob, then it's my own fault if I get big. I mean, that's got to be the way. People have got to take responsibility. Of course, there are people with illnesses, and I respect that too, or disabilities, that may make it impossible for them to get fit and eat the right things, but otherwise, that's, you know, no excuses. But right now, it's time for our quickfire debates. Now, this is the part of the show where we discuss some of the other stories that are making the headlines. Let's start off with the story about diversity. Now, British rapper Stormzy has spoken out about using the word diversity whilst accepting an award. During a pre-recorded acceptance speech, he said, "I encourage everyone in the room today to not just use diversity as a buzzword, but for you lot, whatever position you're in, whatever role you play, to really be a driving factor for it and not just see it as a quota or a box to tick." So, do you think diversity is a bit of a buzzword? Who wants to go first?
It's a bit rich for Stormzy accepting an award for diversity and then say not be used as a buzzword. His industry is pretty diverse, isn't it? As I understand it, something like 26% of people are from ethnic origins in his industry, which is far more than the percentage of the population as a whole. So it is pretty diverse. So is it being used? Is it used as a buzzword?
I don't know, but I tell you what I think.
It's not my field, really.
I get sick to death of reading about problems in the NHS and then opening a Sunday newspaper and seeing all these advertisements for diversity directors on £96,000 a year in various NHS trusts and hospitals. I wrote about this in the Daily Mail. I think there are 300 diversity advisors in the Cabinet Office.
What? 300?
300 advising all. I mean, it's
that
ridiculous.
Can't be right.
On being paid for out of our taxes.
Yeah.
This is where they can start making serious cuts. This Truss government, which it's going to have to do, pay for these tax cuts. It is an epidemic.
Diversity inclusion has become an epidemic.
It's an epidemic. Better word than buzzword. It's an epidemic.
Epidemic, yes, that is a better word.
Thank you for that. Right, our next story, OK. Now, this comes with good news, actually. Scientists have hailed a historic moment for Alzheimer's researchers. A new drug has shown promise in slowing down the progression of the disease. Researchers are a step closer to finding a cure after years of trying. Now, isn't that absolutely wonderful news?
Yes.
That is great.
Absolutely. But the other side of that coin is that people with Alzheimer's, suspected Alzheimer's or any sort of dementia are finding it so much more difficult now to get an appointment to have the initial diagnosis, and apparently the sooner you get the diagnosis, the quicker you can start some sort of treatment. But yes, that's fantastic news, especially for people of my age.
Yeah, well, great news. My father had Alzheimer's, so it's a terrible, terrible illness, and it saps so much life out of a family because it's so much effort involved in caring for them. So let's hope it's right. Bring it on.
And I thought I wouldn't let this pair go.
Oh, dear.
Holly and Phil, because it's all gone a bit quiet. I think nobody's really talking about it, but I don't think they should get off so quickly. The petition that asked for Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby to be axed from TV has reached a whopping 77,000 signatures, and the creator of this petition has had enough of the spotlight, it seems. She's asked for all responses about the petition to be delivered to the public and not her directly. So, do you think that Holly and Phil will ever be forgiven for the world's most momentous queue jump?
You haven't listened to their statement. They didn't jump the queue.
No, they didn't.
They didn't jump the queue. They just walked past it. That's different. I don't think... No, I think it's an immense black mark against their reputation. I mean, they've been the golden couple for so long, so I think it'll be very, very difficult for them to shake this off. Whether they'll get sacked, I've no idea, but I think possibly they will move on in due course.
Yeah, they've weathered the storm now, so they will survive. But if they should have just put their hands up and said, we got it wrong.
Exactly.
Instead of pretending that they were going to report on it, because the report about them walking past the Queen's coffin was due to come out on Tuesday. The Queen was buried the day before.
And they couldn't film in Westminster Hall anyway. Their real problem was that David Beckham queued.
Yeah.
So there was
Susanna Reid.
And Theresa May, apparently.
Did, yeah.
I mean, and as you said, the statement, which, when now in light of, we know that they weren't even on the list. I'll read it.
And, I've got offered an opportunity to go in, and I thought about it for about 30 seconds, maybe a minute, and I thought, what optic would that be, me walking past the queue? People queuing for 20 hours?
No.
So some privileged hack on a newspaper or TV... I didn't do it.
I didn't do it either. I just thought, I can't do that.
You at least are a proper journalist, whereas they're not. They're just daytime TV presenters.
Well, listen, this is what they said, so I think we need to listen to this statement again, because now we know they weren't even on the list. In response to the backlash, Holly and Phil said on their show, and I think this adds insult to injury, like hundreds of accredited broadcasters and journalists, we were given official permission to access the hall. It was strictly for the purpose of reporting on the event for millions of people in the UK who have not been able to visit Westminster in person. Please know that we would never jump a queue.
I wasn't able to visit Westminster in person because I physically wouldn't have been able to do the queue. The people who represented me were not Holly and Phil walking past that queue, but were all the millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people who did queue. They were representing me. The people who'd flown in from Australia and America and joined the back of the queue, people like that.
I know. And that extraordinary bearer party. Well, we haven't forget them. Those young men must be given medals.
And they'd only just come back from Iraq.
They had extraordinary. The concentration. Extraordinary. The concentration and the looks on their faces. And somebody said their mums and dads would be so proud. Well, no, we were all proud.
We were all proud.
I was very proud of them. I was just looking at those steps, thinking I couldn't even do that in stilettos. Let alone something like that. So you imagine that, and it's such a momentous occasion.
And they looked after her right the way from RAF Northolt right to the very end, and they did it so superbly.
They'd apparently had special soles put on their shoes to make even less possibility of slipping.
That was wonderful. Well, listen,
magnificent.
For the Great British Debate this hour, I've been asking lots of you, you've been getting in touch with your thoughts, and loads of you have been saying what you think as to whether you think Liz Truss is a good Prime Minister and whether or not the economic policies will actually work. It'll be interesting, really. So what do you think? Does trickle-down economics work? That was the question, and according to our Twitter poll, 42% of you said yes, 58% of you said no. So it's gone the other way around. I don't believe it. I think it's not really sort of Brexity, but the other way around. I've got to say thank you so much.
Needs to explain. Kwasi needs to explain it.
I don't know why they didn't. Well, thank you so much to my panel. Andrew Pearce, thank you very much, Andrew.
Happy to be with you.
And also Christine Hamilton. It's been a pleasure. And as ever, a big thank you to you at home for your company. I'll be back tomorrow to discuss the top stories with Conservative councillor Claire Pearsall and also comedian Leo Kearse. But now I'll leave you with the weather. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hello again, Aidan McGivern here with the latest from the Met Office. Rain, heavy at times, will cross the country during the rest of the day, accompanied by strong winds and gales in places. But showers will follow the main area of rain, so still further spells of rain to come into the northwest once these weather fronts have moved through. And these are the features that are crossing central parts of the UK, tied into a deep area of low pressure. That's what's bringing those strong winds to the north and the west. The rain, as it clears the southeast, will also be accompanied by gales through the Dover Strait. So very blustery here for a time, 55-mile-per-hour wind gusts. However, by midnight and shortly after, the rain clears out of the way. Clear spells follow, but also quite a number of showers. And with a breezy night to come, well, it's not going to be as cold as it was last night, with temperatures at around 8 to 11 Celsius as we start off Saturday. And bright blue skies for many first thing Saturday. Further showers from the word go across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Western England and Wales. And there'll be showers through central and eastern parts heading into the afternoon. In between the showers, still a stiff breeze, but some shelter from the breeze, and it will feel pleasant enough, 18, perhaps 19 Celsius. There won't be much shelter from the showers, though. They will come through at a pace. That means they won't last that long. And into the evening, many of the showers in the south will disappear. Further showers to come for Scotland and Northern Ireland, northwest England. Meanwhile, towards the southwest, the clouds thicken. We'll see some more persistent damp weather into the far southwest by the end of the night. 13 Celsius here. I think more typically 8 to 11 Celsius elsewhere across the UK. And still some sunshine around first thing across central and eastern England, North Wales. Further showers for Scotland, Northern Ireland and for parts of northern England. But in the far south, thicker cloud and some spells of rain through the day, particularly towards the southwest. Monday, drier in the south, but further rain or showers in the north.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to